My husband served me divorce papers at Thanksgiving dinner in front of my entire family, thinking I'd break down and beg. His best friend even had his phone ready to record my meltdown. But what they didn't know was that I'd been planning for this moment for over a year. See, Derek thought he was so clever, timing it perfectly to humiliate me, expecting me to crumble while the turkey was still warm on the table. He had no idea that the house we were sitting in, the one he'd been living in for 5 years, wasn't legally his. The Victorian home I inherited from my grandmother, the one he'd been making renovation plans for behind my back. Well, let me tell you what happened when I reached into my purse and pulled out my own little surprise. The look on his face when he realized he just played himself was absolutely priceless. If you believe no woman should ever be blindsided in her own home, hit that subscribe button. It's free and helps us reach others who need to hear this. Because what happened next at that Thanksgiving table changed everything, and Derek learned the hard way that underestimating your wife can cost you more than just your dignity. Now, let me take you back to where this really began. The dining room sparkled with autumn warmth, golden candles flickering against polished mahogany, the scent of roasted turkey and sage filling every corner of my grandmother's Victorian home. Derek carved the bird with theatrical precision, playing the perfect host, while my sister Sophia passed around her famous sweet potato casserole. His parents chatted about their Florida retirement plans, completely oblivious to the storm brewing beneath their son's charming smile. I moved through the motions like I had every Thanksgiving for the past 5 years, refilling wine glasses, adjusting napkins, smiling with my mouth, but not my eyes. But tonight felt different. Tonight, my heart wasn't racing with anxiety. It was steady, calm, almost anticipatory. Derek caught my eye as he set down the carving knife, that familiar smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. The same look he'd worn when he'd convinced me to put his name on the utility bills for convenience. The same expression when he'd suggested we streamline our finances by closing my separate account. Tonight, that smirk held something darker: victory, smugness, the confidence of a man who believed he'd orchestrated the perfect takedown. Maya makes the best cornbread stuffing, he announced to the table, his voice carrying that false warmth I'd learned to recognize. Doesn't she, Connor? His best friend nodded from across the table, phone conspicuously placed face up beside his plate. Connor had been unusually quiet tonight, fidgeting with his napkin and glancing between Derek and me like he was watching a tennis match. Now I knew why. She was right. Without Derek's constant criticism and improvement schemes, I rediscovered what my grandmother had created: a home full of warmth, character, and love. The crown molding he'd wanted to remove caught the evening light perfectly. The dated kitchen with its farmhouse sink and vintage tile felt cozy and welcoming. The narrow hallways he'd called inefficient created intimate spaces, perfect for reading nooks and family photos. I'd kept one photo from our marriage, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder. It showed Derek and me at last year's Thanksgiving, his arm around my waist, both of us smiling at the camera. Looking at it now, I could see what I'd missed then: how his smile never reached his eyes, how my own posture was slightly curved inward, like I was trying to make myself smaller. The woman in that photo looked tired, uncertain, always waiting for permission to exist in her own space. I threw it away on New Year's Day. Now, as spring arrived in North Carolina, I was planning my first major change to the house since Derek left. Not a renovation, but a restoration. I'd found old photographs of the original garden my grandmother had maintained, and I was bringing it back to life. Rachel stopped by most weekends, usually bearing pastries from her favorite bakery and updates on Derek's ongoing legal troubles. Apparently, his attempts to hide assets hadn't just been preparation for our divorce. He'd been skimming from his real estate clients as well. His former boss had filed a civil suit, and there was talk of criminal charges. Karma, Rachel said simply, spreading cream cheese on a blueberry bagel. What goes around comes around. I nodded but didn't dwell on it. Derek's downward spiral was his own creation, just like my rebuilding was mine. The house filled with new sounds now. Laughter from dinner parties with friends, music playing freely in every room, the satisfying silence of solitude that didn't feel lonely. I'd started dating again, though nothing serious. For now, I was rediscovering who I was when I wasn't constantly calculating someone else's mood. One evening in late March, I found myself in the exact spot where I'd overheard Derek planning to steal my life. The living room looked the same furniture, same vintage rugs, same family photos on the mantelpiece. But everything felt transformed. This was what Derek had never understood. Some things can't be improved by tearing them down and starting over. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is preserve what matters and remove what doesn't belong. As I turned off the lights and headed upstairs to my grandmother's bedroom, my bedroom, I smiled at the truth Derek had learned too late. You can't steal someone's home. You can only be asked to leave. It's always been so domestic, Derek continued, the word dripping with condescension disguised as affection. Really knows her place in the kitchen. My sister's eyebrows furrowed slightly. She'd heard that tone before, caught glimpses of the man Derek became when he thought no one important was watching. But tonight, even she had no idea what was coming. Speaking of places, Derek said, pushing back from the table with deliberate slowness, I have something special for my beautiful wife before dessert. The room quieted. Linda, Derek's mother, clasped her hands together with delight, probably expecting jewelry or a heartfelt card. James raised his wine glass slightly, anticipating a toast. Sophia smiled encouragingly, though something uncertain flickered in her eyes. Derek reached into his blazer pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, crisp and official looking. No ribbon, no bow, no Happy Thanksgiving scrawled across the front. Just my name typed in cold black letters. Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart, he said, placing it directly in front of my plate with the ceremony of a man delivering a death sentence. Connor's phone shifted slightly on the table. Recording. I looked down at the envelope, then back up at Derek's expectant face. The entire table held its breath, sensing something monumental, but not understanding what. My hands remained steady as I picked up the envelope, opened it calmly, and scanned the first line. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Already filed, already processed, already designed to destroy me publicly, completely, on the day I was supposed to be grateful. I looked up at Derek, whose smile had grown wider, more predatory. He was waiting for the tears, the pleading, the collapse he'd been promising Connor for weeks. Instead, I smiled back. Thank you, I said softly, almost sweetly. Now I have something for you too. But this story didn't start at that Thanksgiving table. Not really. The unraveling began 18 months earlier, with something as simple as a joke that wasn't funny. You know this house could be worth a fortune if we just knocked out that wall, Derek had said one evening, gesturing toward the original 1890s molding that my grandmother had lovingly preserved. We were sitting in the living room after dinner, him scrolling through real estate apps while I graded marketing proposals from work. Grandma Rose would roll over in her grave, I'd laughed, not looking up from my papers. She spent decades restoring every piece of original woodwork. Well, Rose isn't paying the mortgage anymore, is she? His tone was light, casual, but something in it made me glance up. He was staring at the crown molding with the calculating look he usually reserved for his commercial development projects. There is no mortgage, Derek. The house is paid off. Right, but we could leverage the equity. Really maximize the potential here. He stood up, pacing toward the mantelpiece like he was already envisioning its demolition. Gut the kitchen. Open concept everything. Flip it for double what it's worth now. I set down my pen carefully. This isn't a flip house. It's my family home. Our family home, he corrected, but the word our sounded wrong coming from his mouth. Possessive in a way that made my stomach tighten. That was the first time I really noticed it. How Derek talked about my inheritance like it was his investment opportunity. But I pushed the feeling aside, told myself he was just being practical. After all, we were married. What was mine was his, right? Wrong. Over the following months, Derek's suggestions became more frequent, more pointed. He started bringing home renovation magazines, circling modern designs that looked nothing like the cozy Victorian charm my grandmother had spent her life curating. He'd invite his real estate buddies over for dinner, letting them walk through the house like potential buyers, commenting on wasted space and dated features. Maya's a bit sentimental about the old-fashioned stuff, he'd tell them with that patronizing chuckle. But she'll come around once she sees the profit margins. I stopped correcting him after a while. Stopped pointing out that the house was in my name alone, inherited through a will that specifically stated it couldn't be sold without my express written consent. Derek never read legal documents anyway. He just signed whatever his lawyer told him to sign, and assumed everyone else was equally careless. That assumption would be his downfall. The real warning signs started showing up in smaller ways. Derek began answering questions about our renovation timeline when neighbors asked. He scheduled contractor consultations without telling me, then acted surprised when I was upset about strangers walking through my house taking measurements. I'm just being proactive, Maya. These guys are booked months out. We need to get on their calendar now if we want to start demo in the spring. What demo? We never agreed to any demo. He'd look at me like I was being deliberately difficult. Come on, babe. You can't seriously want to live in a museum forever. We're young. We should be building wealth, not preserving some old lady's dollhouse. Every time he called it a dollhouse, something inside me died a little. This wasn't just a house. It was where I'd spent every summer as a child, where my grandmother had taught me to bake her famous apple pie, where I'd hidden during thunderstorms and felt completely safe. It was the only place that felt entirely mine in a world where Derek was slowly erasing my preferences, one practical suggestion at a time. But I didn't fight back. Not yet. I just started paying closer attention. I noticed how Derek would casually mention our renovation plans to his parents during Sunday dinners. How he'd screenshot property values from real estate apps and text them to his brother with messages like, Maya's place could pull this easy. How he'd started referring to the guest bedroom as his future home office and the sunroom as wasted square footage. Most telling of all was the night I caught him on the phone with Connor. Voice low but not quite low enough. She'll resist at first, but once I show her the numbers, trust me, man, this place is a gold mine. All I need is her signature on a few papers, and we're looking at a $500,000 profit, minimum. That was the night I stopped being Derek's wife and started being his student. I wanted to learn everything about the man who was planning to sell my soul. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday in March, exactly 8 months before that Thanksgiving dinner. I was working late at my marketing firm in downtown Charlotte when my phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Don't wait up. Drinks with the team ran long. It was the third late work night that week. I drove home through empty streets, rain drumming against my windshield, thinking about the Derek who used to text me every hour when we first started dating. The man who couldn't wait to get home to me, who'd surprise me with my favorite Thai takeout just because it was Wednesday. When had I become someone he avoided? I pulled into our my driveway, and noticed Connor's truck parked across the street. Strange. If Derek was out with his work team, why was his best friend sitting in his vehicle outside our house at 11 p.m.? I parked in the garage and entered through the kitchen, hanging my keys on the hook by the door. The house felt different somehow. Too quiet, but not empty quiet, like someone was holding their breath. Then I heard Derek's laugh coming from the living room. Deep, careless, slightly drunk. I should have announced myself. Should have called out, "I'm home," like I always did. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the fact that he'd lied about where he was. Maybe it was the way Connor's truck was positioned like a getaway car. Whatever it was, I found myself moving silently through the kitchen, staying in the shadows of the hallway where I could hear but not be seen. Already got the preliminary assessments done, Derek was saying. 3 different contractors, all confirmed the same thing. Knock out the load-bearing walls, gut the kitchen, modernize everything. We're looking at a 200% return minimum. But Maya's not on board. Connor's voice was skeptical. Maya doesn't understand investment strategy. She thinks with her emotions, not her brain. Derek's words hit me like ice water. All that sentimental garbage about her grandmother, it's just dead weight holding us back. Dude, it's her house. Technically, yes, but we're married. Community property laws, spousal rights. There are ways around these things. My lawyers already mapped out the strategy. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering so loud I was sure they'd hear it. "What strategy?" Connor asked. "Simple. I file for divorce, claim irreconcilable differences over major financial decisions. In North Carolina, a spouse can force the sale of property to divide assets, even inherited property, if they can prove the other party is being unreasonably obstinate about maximizing marital wealth." My blood turned to ice. He'd researched this, planned it. My grandmother's house, my sanctuary, my one piece of independence, he was going to steal it through legal manipulation. That's cold, man. It's business. Maya will get her half, minus legal fees and renovation costs, of course. She'll probably walk away with $200,000, which is more money than she's ever seen in her life. She should thank me. And you? I'll get the property, handle the renovations, flip it for profit. Easy $500,000 for 6 months' work. Maybe more if we really go high-end with the finishes. The living room fell quiet, except for the clink of Derek's whiskey glass against the coffee table. My coffee table. In my living room. In the house my grandmother had left me because she trusted me to preserve her legacy. "When?" Connor asked. "Soon. I'm documenting everything. Her refusal to consider renovations, her irrational attachment to outdated features, building a case for financial obstinacy. Give it another few months, and I'll have enough evidence to make this airtight." Another clink, another sip of whiskey in my grandmother's house while he plotted to steal it. "You really think she won't see it coming?" Derek laughed, and the sound made my skin crawl. "Maya? She's brilliant at marketing campaigns, but completely naive about everything else. She still thinks marriage is about love and compromise. She has no idea how the real world works." That night, something fundamental shifted inside me. Not broken, crystallized. Like water becoming ice, soft becoming sharp, prey becoming predator. Derek thought I was naive, emotional, easily manipulated. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. I backed away silently, climbed the stairs to our bedroom, and began planning his destruction. The next morning, I woke up before Derek and made coffee like nothing had changed. I kissed him goodbye at the door, wished him a good day at work, and smiled the same smile I'd been perfecting for years. But inside, I was calculating. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, I was on the phone. "Rachel, it's Maya. I need to see you today. It's urgent." Rachel Martinez had been my college roommate before she became one of Charlotte's most respected family law attorneys. She'd built her reputation defending women in high-stakes divorces, and more importantly, she'd never lost a case involving inherited property. "What's going on?" she asked, and I could hear the concern in her voice. "I need to understand community property laws in North Carolina. Specifically, what rights a spouse has to inherited real estate." Silence. Then, Maya, are you and Derek having problems? Just answer the question. Please. 2 hours later, I sat in Rachel's office overlooking uptown Charlotte, watching her review copies of my grandmother's will, the deed to the house, and our marriage certificate. Okay, she said finally, removing her reading glasses. First, the good news. Your house is separate property, inherited before marriage, never commingled with marital funds, title never changed to include Derek. Legally, it's 100% yours. I felt my shoulders relax slightly. But, she continued, and my stomach dropped. North Carolina does allow for forced partition sales in certain circumstances. If Derek can prove you're being financially unreasonable about a major marital asset, a judge might order the sale and distribution of proceeds. How would he prove that? Documentation, evidence that you're refusing reasonable opportunities to maximize the property's value. Emails, texts, witness testimony about your irrational attachment to keeping things unchanged. I thought about all those renovation magazines Derek had left around, all the contractor consultations I'd refused, all the times I'd said no to his improvements. He's been building a case, I said quietly. Rachel leaned forward. Maya, what's really going on? I told her everything. The overheard conversation, Derek's plans, the lawyer consultations he'd apparently already had. Rachel's expression grew darker with each detail. That calculating bastard, she muttered. But here's what he doesn't know. Two can play the documentation game. She pulled out a legal pad and started writing furiously. Starting today, you're going to document everything. Every conversation about the house, every joke about renovations, every attempt to pressure you into changes. More importantly, we're going to document his real motivations. How? Financial records. Derek's been treating your house like an investment opportunity, not a family home. We can prove his interest is purely monetary, which undermines any claim that he's acting in good faith for the marriage. Over the next week, Rachel helped me set up what she called the infrastructure of protection. First, we created a detailed timeline of Derek's escalating pressure about renovations, complete with screenshots of the real estate apps he'd been showing me and photos of all those renovation magazines strategically placed around the house. Second, we documented his discussions with contractors. I started recording our conversations. North Carolina is a one-party consent state, meaning I could legally record without his knowledge. Within days, I had Derek on tape talking about maximizing our equity and convincing Maya to see reason. Third, and most importantly, we began tracking his communications with his lawyer. Rachel had contacts in the legal community, and Derek's attorney had apparently been asking around about forced partition cases involving inherited property. He's definitely planning something, Rachel confirmed. But Maya, here's the beautiful thing. While he's building a case to steal your house, he's also creating evidence of his own predatory intentions. The real breakthrough came when I started monitoring our joint financial accounts more carefully. Derek had been moving money. Small amounts, nothing I'd normally notice, but consistent transfers to a separate account I didn't know existed. He's hiding assets, Rachel explained when I showed her the patterns. Probably planning to claim he contributed more to the marriage financially, which would strengthen his argument for a larger share of property division. But Derek's biggest mistake was his arrogance. He was so confident in his plan, so certain I was too naive to see it coming, that he'd gotten sloppy. The night I found his laptop open to an email thread titled Maya House Strategy, I knew I had him. He wasn't just planning to divorce me. He was planning to destroy me. The man I'd loved for 5 years was systematically dismantling my life like a business transaction. That night, I stopped being his victim and became his opponent. And unlike Derek, I didn't underestimate my enemy. The hardest part wasn't gathering evidence. It was pretending I didn't know. For 6 months, I became an actress in my own life, playing the role of the naive wife while building an airtight case behind the scenes. Derek made it easier than it should have been. His arrogance was my greatest advantage. "You know what I was thinking?" he said one evening in late spring, casually buttering his dinner roll. "Maybe we should get the kitchen appraised, just to see what we're working with." I looked up from my salad, practiced the perfect expression of mild confusion. Appraised for what? Insurance purposes, home improvement planning, boring adult stuff. He flashed that charming smile that used to make my knees weak. Now it just made my skin crawl. "I guess that makes sense," I said slowly, like I was really considering it. "But wouldn't that cost money we don't need to spend?" "Maya, babe, you can't put a price on peace of mind. What if something happened and we were underinsured? We'd lose everything." The recorder in my pocket captured every word. By now, I had dozens of these conversations. Derek gradually escalating his pressure while I played the role of the reluctant but slowly warming wife. "Okay," I said finally, "if you think it's important." His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? You're not going to fight me on this?" "Why would I fight you? You're just looking out for us." That night, Derek was more affectionate than he'd been in months. He brought me wine, rubbed my shoulders, talked excitedly about securing our future. I smiled and nodded and let him think he was winning. What he didn't know was that Rachel had already connected me with her own appraiser, someone who would give us a legitimate assessment for insurance purposes while also documenting the property's value in its current unmodified state. Derek's appraiser came the following week. I watched from the kitchen window as Derek walked him through the property, gesturing enthusiastically at walls he wanted to demolish, spaces he wanted to open up, original features he clearly saw as obstacles to profit. "The bones are good," I heard the man tell Derek as they wrapped up. "But you're right about maximizing the potential. These old Victorians, people get too sentimental about preserving every little detail. Sometimes you have to break a few eggs. Derek's laughter carried through the open window. "Exactly." Maya's finally starting to see reason. "Women just need things explained to them properly." I gripped my coffee mug tighter and smiled when Derek waved at me through the window. The performance extended beyond just Derek. I had to convince his entire circle that I was gradually coming around to his way of thinking. At Connor's barbecue in June, I made sure to mention how Derek had been helping me understand the financial benefits of renovation. I asked his mother for advice about modernizing old houses, letting her lecture me about the importance of keeping up with the times. "Derek's so smart about these things," I told Linda over her famous potato salad. "I'm learning so much from him about property values and investment strategies." Derek beamed like a proud teacher whose slow student was finally grasping basic concepts. But my best performance was with Derek himself. I started asking him questions about renovation timelines, budget projections, potential return on investment. I let him explain real estate concepts to me like I'd never heard them before, nodding thoughtfully and taking notes. "See, the trick is to invest just enough to maximize profit without over-improving for the neighborhood," he told me one evening, spreading contractor estimates across our dining room table. "We could easily pull $600K if we do this right." "600,000? I repeated, eyes wide with apparent amazement. "Really?" "Maybe more. The market's hot right now for renovated Victorians. Buyers want the charm, but with modern functionality." I picked up one of the estimates, studying it like it contained the secrets of the universe. "This is incredible, Derek. I had no idea you'd put so much thought into this." "I've been researching for months. Market analysis, comparable sales, renovation ROI. I've got it all mapped out." "You're amazing," I said, and for a brief moment, his expression softened into something that might have been genuine affection. Then he ruined it. "I just want what's best for us, Maya." Sometimes that means making hard decisions that you might not understand at first. I kissed his cheek and told him I trusted his judgment completely. 3 months later, I'd have enough evidence to bury him. The manila envelope sat between my plate and the cranberry sauce like a death sentence wrapped in legal jargon. Around the table, my family's confused faces reflected the flickering candlelight. Sophia's fork suspended halfway to her mouth, Derek's parents exchanging worried glances, my Aunt Emma gripping her wine glass with white knuckles. Derek stood behind his chair, hands clasped behind his back like a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. His smile was pure predator, wide, confident, completely convinced he'd just delivered the killing blow. "Well?" he prompted, tilting his head with mock concern. "Aren't you going to open it?" Connor's phone remained strategically positioned, red recording dot barely visible, but definitely there. This was supposed to be my public execution, streamed live for Derek's entertainment and future leverage. I looked down at the papers again, then back up at Derek's expectant face. "Dissolution of marriage," I read aloud, voice steady as stone. "Filed October 15th, citing irreconcilable differences regarding major financial decisions." "Maya," Sophia started, but I held up a gentle hand. "It's okay," I said softly. "Really?" Derek's grin widened. This was going even better than he'd planned. No tears, no drama, just quiet acceptance from his emotionally beaten wife. "I think," I continued, reaching into my purse, "this calls for an exchange of gifts." I pulled out a thick manila envelope of my own, twice as thick as Derek's, bound with a red ribbon that matched the cranberries on our table. I placed it directly in front of his plate, with the same ceremonial precision he'd used on me. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart." Derek's confidence flickered for just a moment. "What's this?" "Open it and see." He untied the ribbon with shaking fingers, probably expecting some desperate plea for reconciliation, maybe a counteroffer for marriage counseling. Connor leaned forward slightly, phone still recording what he thought would be my final humiliation. Derek pulled out the first document, and his face went sheet white. "Notice of trespass," I announced helpfully as he stared at the papers. "Effective immediately. You have 72 hours to remove your personal belongings from the premises." "What the hell is this?" His voice cracked slightly. "Keep reading. There's more." The second document made him sit down hard in his chair. "Restraining order? Temporary, pending our divorce proceedings. You're not allowed within 500 feet of my property or to contact me except through legal counsel." Derek's mother gasped. "Maya, what's going on?" "This is Derek's home, too." "Actually, Linda, it's not." I smiled at her with genuine sympathy. "It never was. The house is in my name alone, inherited from my grandmother. Derek has no legal claim to it whatsoever." "But we're married," Derek sputtered, finally finding his voice. "Community property laws don't apply to inherited assets that were never commingled with marital funds." I took a sip of my wine, savoring the way his face crumpled with each word. I had an excellent lawyer explain that to me. Keep reading. Document 3 made Connor's phone slip in his hands. Derek read it twice before the words sank in. "Asset freeze? Every account, every investment, every hidden penny you've been squirreling away in preparation for this little performance." I gestured toward Connor's phone. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice the money transfers? The secret accounts? The cash withdrawals that coincidentally matched your attorney consultation fees?" Derek's hands were trembling now. "You can't. This is illegal. You can't freeze marital assets." "I can when there's evidence of asset hiding and financial manipulation." Which brings us to document 4. He pulled out a thick folder stuffed with printed emails, bank statements, and transcribed phone calls. His own words stared back at him from dozens of pages. Every conversation about flipping my house, Every strategy session with Connor, every cold calculation about maximizing his profit from my grandmother's legacy. Maya doesn't understand investment strategy. She thinks with her emotions, not her brain. I quoted from memory. That was from March 15th, around 11 p.m. You were sitting right there on my grandmother's couch, drinking my grandmother's whiskey, planning to steal my grandmother's house. The room was dead silent except for the soft hiss of the fireplace. Even Connor had stopped recording. Maya, Derek whispered, let me explain. Oh, Derek, I said, standing up slowly and smoothing my dress. You already explained everything. 6 months of explanations, all recorded, all documented, all admissible in court. I looked around the table at my family's shocked faces, then back at Derek's crumbling expression. You have 3 days to get out. Don't make me call the sheriff. The silence that followed was deafening. Derek sat frozen, staring at the documents spread before him like he could make them disappear through sheer will. His face had gone from confident predator to cornered animal in the span of 5 minutes. This is insane, he finally whispered, then louder. This is absolutely insane. You can't do this. I already did. I remained standing, hands folded calmly in front of me. Everything's been filed, Derek. The court's open Monday morning, and my attorney will be there bright and early. Connor finally set his phone down, the recording that was supposed to capture my breakdown now documenting Derek's complete humiliation instead. Dude, he muttered, maybe we should— Shut up, Derek snapped, whirling on his best friend. Just shut up. This is your fault too, with your stupid recording idea. My fault, Connor's voice pitched higher. You're the one who wanted to serve divorce papers at Thanksgiving dinner like some kind of psychopath. Derek's father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Son, maybe you should call your lawyer. My lawyer? Derek laughed, high and desperate. My lawyer who told me this would be easy because Maya was too emotional to think strategically? That lawyer? I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Derek shot to his feet, documents scattering to the floor. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won? I don't think anything, Derek. I know. I bent down gracefully and collected the papers he'd scattered. Every conversation we had about renovations, every time you pressured me to change my grandmother's house, every meeting with contractors I never agreed to, it's all documented. You built the case against yourself. His mother spoke up, voice shaky. Derek, you never told us you were having problems. We could have helped. Maybe counseling. There's nothing to counsel, Linda, I said gently. Your son planned this divorce specifically to force the sale of my inherited property. He's been moving money into hidden accounts for months. This isn't about marriage problems. It's about financial fraud. Derek's face turned red. That's not— You're twisting everything. I was trying to build our future. Our future? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Derek, you told Connor I'd be lucky to walk away with $200,000 while you pocketed $500,000. You called preserving my grandmother's legacy dead weight and sentimental garbage. What part of that sounds like our future? Sophia finally found her voice. Derek, is that true? Did you really say those things? Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. The recordings didn't lie, and he knew it. I want everyone out, he said suddenly, his voice cracking. This is my house too, and I want everyone out. Actually, I said, pulling my phone from my purse, you have that backwards. I dialed a number while Derek watched in growing horror. Sheriff's Department. This is Maya Thornton at 847 Maple Lane in Willow Creek. I have a trespassing situation and need an officer to help escort an individual from my property. Maya, no. Derek lunged for my phone, but Sophia's husband Mark stepped between us. Yes, I continued into the phone. I have a valid restraining order. He was served tonight and is refusing to leave peacefully. Derek collapsed back into his chair, head in his hands. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. Connor stood up slowly, keys jingling in his pocket. Man, I'm out. This is way beyond anything I signed up for. You're leaving? Derek's voice was barely a whisper. You're just gonna leave me here? Dude, you lied to me. You said she'd never see it coming, that she was too naive to fight back. You said this would be easy. Connor shook his head. But she played you like a fiddle, and honestly, good for her. Derek's parents exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Linda reached for her purse with trembling hands, while James loosened his tie like it was choking him. We should go, James said quietly. Let you two handle this privately. There's nothing private to handle, I replied. Derek will be staying elsewhere tonight, and every night going forward. Red and blue lights began flashing through the dining room windows. Derek looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw something real in his eyes. Not manipulation, not calculation, just pure, undiluted fear. Maya, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, start over. I looked down at the man who'd planned to destroy my life as a Thanksgiving surprise. No, I said simply. We really can't. 6 months later, I stood in my grandmother's kitchen, my kitchen, making coffee in the peaceful silence of a Saturday morning. Sunlight streamed through the original stained glass window, casting rainbow patterns across the countertops Derek had wanted to tear out and replace. The house felt different now, lighter, like it was breathing freely for the first time in years. The divorce had been finalized in February, exactly 3 months after that Thanksgiving dinner. Derek's lawyer had tried every angle, claiming emotional distress, questioning the validity of my recordings, even attempting to argue that I'd manipulated Derek into making incriminating statements. None of it worked. Rachel had been masterful in court, presenting Derek's own words as evidence of calculated fraud. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen this type of financial manipulation before, awarded me everything I'd asked for: exclusive ownership of the house, recovery of all hidden assets, and attorney fees. Derek got exactly what he'd planned to give me: nothing. The morning the judgment was finalized, I received a text from an unknown number. You destroyed my life. I hope you're happy. I deleted it without responding and blocked the number. Derek's anger was no longer my problem to manage. Emma had moved in with me for a few weeks after Derek was removed, bringing her rescue dog Max and enough wine to stock a small restaurant. We'd spent those early days stripping Derek's presence from every room, donating his clothes, boxing up his belongings, even painting over the marks he'd made on walls where he'd envisioned his renovations. You know what's funny? Emma had said one evening as we sat in the sunroom with our wine. He spent all that time trying to change this place, but he never saw how beautiful it already was. She was right. Without Derek's constant criticism and improvement schemes, I rediscovered what my grandmother had created: a home full of warmth, character, and love. The crown molding he'd wanted to remove caught the evening light perfectly. The dated kitchen with its farmhouse sink and vintage tile felt cozy and welcoming. The narrow hallways he'd called inefficient created intimate spaces perfect for reading nooks and family photos. I'd kept one photo from our marriage, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder. It showed Derek and me at last year's Thanksgiving, his arm around my waist, both of us smiling at the camera. Looking at it now, I could see what I'd missed then: how his smile never reached his eyes, how my own posture was slightly curved inward, like I was trying to make myself smaller. The woman in that photo looked tired, uncertain, always waiting for permission to exist in her own space. I threw it away on New Year's Day. Now, as spring arrived in North Carolina, I was planning my first major change to the house since Derek left. Not a renovation, but a restoration. I'd found old photographs of the original garden my grandmother had maintained, and I was bringing it back to life. Rachel stopped by most weekends, usually bearing pastries from her favorite bakery and updates on Derek's ongoing legal troubles. Apparently, his attempts to hide assets hadn't just been preparation for our divorce. He'd been skimming from his real estate clients as well. His former boss had filed a civil suit, and there was talk of criminal charges. Karma, Rachel said simply, spreading cream cheese on a blueberry bagel. What goes around comes around. I nodded but didn't dwell on it. Derek's downward spiral was his own creation, just like my rebuilding was mine. The house filled with new sounds now, laughter from dinner parties with friends, music playing freely in every room, the satisfying silence of solitude that didn't feel lonely. I'd started dating again, though nothing serious. For now, I was rediscovering who I was when I wasn't constantly calculating someone else's mood. One evening in late March, I found myself in the exact spot where I'd overheard Derek planning to steal my life. The living room looked the same. Same furniture, same vintage rugs, same family photos on the mantelpiece. But everything felt transformed. This was what Derek had never understood. Some things can't be improved by tearing them down and starting over. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is preserve what matters and remove what doesn't belong. As I turned off the lights and headed upstairs to my grandmother's bedroom, my bedroom, I smiled at the truth Derek had learned too late. You can't steal someone's home. You can only be asked to leave.